For that, what you need to do is create different silos for different goals. Create SIPs for different goals. I've just explained to you in the earlier workshop: marriage, kids' education, retirement, vacation, etc. etc. So create different SIPs for different goals. No need for too much of diversification. Many a times I've seen in investor portfolios investments in 15 SIPs and 20 SIPs. Finally, what it ends up doing is that it will replicate Sensex, and I have explained to you that Sensex delivers much lower returns than diversified actively managed schemes. So you don't want to go there. A maximum 3 to 5 fund houses. You select the right fund houses, select the right schemes from those fund houses, and create your SIPs in those schemes on an ongoing basis for different goals. Do not subsidize one goal with the other goal. So if you have a retirement goal kitty, be emotionally attached to that. If you have an education kitty for your kids, be emotionally attached to that. Do not remove from that particular goal and then take it out for the other goals. So that's what I'm trying to say by not subsidizing one goal with the other goals. Namaste, Sat Shri Akal and Adab. My name is Sunil Jhaveri, also known as Mr. Bond in the mutual fund industry. I wish to thank Baroda Mutual Fund for inviting me to address the investors of Prudent Corporate. और आज हम बहुत सही टाइम पे आए हैं और मिले हैं, because markets have turned all of a sudden extremely volatile. जो optimism था, all of a sudden there is a lot of pessimism in the market also. Interest rates will be going northwards. Interest rates will be hiked. Inflation एक काफी सारी worry है globally also and in the Indian context also. Equity markets are also worrisome right now because काफी सारी corrections हो रही हैं global markets में भी, Indian markets में भी. Gold has not performed over the last couple of years. So हम कहाँ जाए तो कहाँ जाए, investors जाए तो कहाँ जाए. So हम जो बात करने वाले हैं आज, we are going to talk about financial freedom. How to achieve that financial freedom through asset allocation and specifically through certain schemes in the mutual fund industry. उसके बारे में हम आज डिस्कस करेंगे. और आपने ये जो क्लिप देखी थी बागबान मूवी की, it's a very interesting thought process which every one of the investors must understand and appreciate. फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम पाने के लिए रिटायरमेंट के टाइम पे अपना पैसा ही सबसे बड़ी ताकत होती है. And how do you achieve that financial freedom? Is retirement equal to financial freedom or is financial freedom equal to retirement? ये सब के बारे में हम बात करेंगे. And at the end of the session, of course, we will take Q&A also. So let's begin with the presentation and carry forward the presentation from where we left. Remember, your kids are not your retirement fund. आप जितने भी हैं पेरेंट्स हैं उनको समझना चाहिए कि आप you cannot depend on kids anymore and you should not think that they are your retirement fund. हम सोचते हैं कि जब भी हम बूढ़े हो जाएंगे, हम रिटायर हो जाएंगे, तभी हमारे बच्चे हमको देखेंगे. At the same time, kids must understand that your parents are not your emergency fund. Each and every one of us should achieve their own financial freedom. बहुत जरूरी है ये important message जानने के लिए. वो जमाने गए जब ये हम सोचते थे कि हमारे बच्चे होंगे, वो हमको बुढ़ापे का सहारा बनेंगे, वो हमको देखेंगे, वो हमारी financial needs को पूरी करेंगे. Kids can be geographically anywhere in any part of the country or any part of the world also. So ये thought process से हमको हटना पड़ेगा. हमको खुद अपना financial freedom achieve करना पड़ेगा, each and every one of us, be it parents, be it kids, etc. Differentiate between retirement and financial freedom. Retirement is not equal to financial freedom. You may have to retire because you are at that age, you are in a service either in the private sector or in the government sector also, and you have to retire because आपकी जो कंपनी की पॉलिसी है कि you have to retire at the age of 58 or 60 or whatever may be the age. But you may not have achieved financial freedom. Financial freedom का मतलब ये है कि आपके पास इतना पैसा है जो आपकी सब जरूरियत को पूरा कर सकता है. After you either retire or you may wish to have achieved financial freedom even at the age of 45, 50, 55. आपको sabbatical लेना है, आपको अपनी hobbies को pursue करना है. But financial freedom can help you retire.
सो आप ये प्लीज याद रखिएगा कि रिटायरमेंट इज नॉट इक्वल टू फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम। हम बात कर रहे हैं फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम की, एंड फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम यू कैन अचीव एट द एज ऑफ 40 ऑल्सो, 45 ऑल्सो, 50 ऑल्सो, because nowadays people wish to retire or take sabbatical and not work just for the sake of earning money at earlier age than later also. हम सबको मालूम है आईपीएल 2020 क्या होता है. हाउ मेनी ऑफ अस नो रूल ऑफ 30-30? Rule of 30-30 says you have 30 years of your golden period, what the working life, and 30 years of your golden years, what we call retirement life. But unfortunately golden years जो हम बोलते हैं, जो working period है, वो कम हो रहा है, और golden years की जो definition है 30 साल की, that is getting extended to 35 and 40 years also, depending on when you wish to be financially free and not work just for the sake of earning money. There are different stages of life. The carefree life. This is a stage when kids have just started their career. Fortunately for them, they don't realize that they do not have any responsibilities or liabilities at this stage in life. They may be staying with their parents and not married. Years when they have maximum disposable income. मैं maximum income भी बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, maximum disposable income की बात कर रहा हूँ. And this is the time when unfortunately they are chasing instant gratification and spending more and saving less. This is a period जहां आप अपनी financial freedom के लिए you can start saving and investing at an early stage, especially in the initial stages, जहां आप absolutely responsible free है, आपके पास कोई लायबिलिटीज नहीं है, बिकॉज यू मे बी स्टेइंग विथ योर पेरेंट्स. आपको घर के रेंट वगैरह देने की जरूरत नहीं है, घर खरीद के ईएमआई देने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू मे नॉट बी मैरिड एंड दैट्स द रीजन व्हाई you don't have any expenditure on your kid or your wife or managing a family, etc. So this is where you have maximum disposable income. I would urge, I do not know what is the age group of the audience today, but I'm sure there will be youngsters also. I would urge that they should start planning for their financial freedom. हम retirement की बात नहीं कर रहे, planning for their financial freedom as soon as they start their careers. उसके बाद आपकी शादी होती है. This is the second stage in life. Then you have kids. You will be spending money on EMIs for cars, housing loan, etc. Pay for insurance like term insurance or medical insurance also. This is a period when you have maximum responsibility, but आपकी income शायद कम है और आपके expenditure काफी ज्यादा है. So that is the reason why you may not have enough disposable income at this stage in life. ये जानना बहुत जरूरी है, because इसके पहले वाला जो stage था आपके पास, उसमें जो आपने अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट करना शुरू कर दी होती, तो ये स्टेज को आप काफी इजीली पास कर सकते हैं और काफी इजीली मैनेज कर सकते हैं. उसके बाद एक आता है इनकम एंड वेल्थ इंक्रीजेस. यू आर डूइंग वेरी वेल इन योर करियर, यू आर डूइंग वेरी वेल इन योर जॉब्स एक्सेट्रा, और यहां पर आपकी इनकम बढ़ जाती है. देयर इज अगेन वन मोर टाइम व्हेन डिस्पोजेबल इनकम इज मोर. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इनकम इज ऑल्सो मोर, एंड सेकेंडली आपकी डिस्पोजेबल इनकम भी काफी हो सकती है. बट इस स्टेज में लॉट ऑफ पीपल विश टू इंक्रीज देयर स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग. रेंटेड हाउस से नया खुद का घर खरीदना है, टू व्हीलर से गाड़ी खरीदनी है, गाड़ी खरीदी है तो फिर दूसरी नई महंगी गाड़ी खरीदनी है, यू वांट टू गो फॉर वेकेशंस अब्रॉड एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. बट again you have to realize that this is the time to accelerate your savings and investing, because उसके बाद आपके पास ज्यादा टाइम बचेगा नहीं of your golden period, जो मैंने जिसकी बात करी, जो first 30 years of your working life, what we call golden period, वो कम धीरे धीरे करके कम हो रहे हैं. और आपको जो financial freedom अचीव करनी है sooner than later, this is another stage of your life where you will have to accelerate your savings and investing to aim for early financial freedom. फिर एक दौर आता है when you are about to retire at the age of 50 or 55. By now you should be totally debt free. ये बहुत जरूरी है. जब तक आपके पास डेट रहेगा आप फाइनेंशियली फ्री नहीं रह पाएंगे. आपका जो EMIs जो गाड़ी के हैं, हाउसिंग के हैं, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, all that should be behind you at this stage in your life. And by now you should have paid all your debt or all your loans, whichever loans which you may have taken, and you should become debt free. Aim to become debt free. Aim to preserve wealth. इस दौरान पे आपको प्रेजर्वेशन ऑफ वेल्थ विल बिकम एन एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ योर फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम गोल, और वो कैसे करेंगे वो भी आपसे डिस्कस करूंगा मैं। इन्वेस्ट विथ एन एम टू क्रिएट रेगुलर इनकम, इस दौरान आप जो भी इन्वेस्ट करोगे उसको वेल्थ प्रेजर्वेशन के साथ, हाउ विल यू क्रिएट कैश फ्लो फॉर योर सेल्फ, बिकॉज रिटायरमेंट इज, और यू नो आई यूज रिटायरमेंट हियर, कि आपको रिटायर करना है, फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम लेना है, और उसके बाद अपने को एक कैश फ्लो भी जनरेट करना है, बिकॉज फाइनली एज आई टोल्ड यू योर गोल्डन ईयर्स आर गोइंग टू बी स्ट्रेचिंग if you wish to have financial freedom and retirement earlier than later. Start SWPs, जो systematic withdrawal जो बोलते हैं, from your own investments. So this is that stage of capital preservation. जो भी आपने wealth की है उसको contain करना है, consolidate करना है, and become debt free also. Then finally you have a stage where you're totally retired, you are financially free also, you aim to preserve capital. I'm not saying this can be at the age of 58 or 60 only, it can be at the age of 50 or 55 also. यहाँ पर preservation of capital important है, but infuse flavors of equity to beat you must have inflation beating returns. जो आपको inflation beating returns करने हैं तो खाली debt से आप नहीं वो कर पाएंगे. You will not be able to achieve inflation beating returns only through debt. You will have to infuse some flavors of equity. वो कैसे करनी है वो भी हम डिस्कस करेंगे. मोर इम्पोर्टेंटली इस स्टेज पे हम लोग सोचते हैं कि ये जो फाइनेंशियल हमारे जो एसेट्स हमने बनाए हैं, म्यूचुअल फंड इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की है, इक्विटी में इन्वेस्ट किया है, फिक्स डिपॉजिट्स की है, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, दे थिंक दैट इट इज अ सिंगल जनरेशन एसेट. Get out of that mindset, because this is also as multi-generation asset as your property or as the jewelry you consider as multi-generation asset. आपने कभी भी नहीं सोचा है कि ज्वेलरी खरीदने के बाद उसकी वैल्यू क्या रही है, उसकी प्राइसिंग क्या रही है. आपने कभी नहीं सोचा है कि घर खरीदने के बाद आपको पता है कि ये घर और ये ज्वेलरी आपके सेकंड जनरेशन के पास जाने वाली है. And that's how you are not bothered about the day-to-day fluctuation of prices of these assets. Similarly, you should not be bothered about the financial assets जो आपने create किए हैं, as long as you do not erode it by being 100% in equity. If you are going to be dependent on that corpus for your cash flow going forward, and if you are not, and if you are able to manage that very in a balanced manner with not too much of volatility in your portfolio but still create cash flow, etc., then treat this as a multi-generation asset. Because finally आपको यहाँ इस दौरान इस स्टेज में you are bothered more about cash flow. आपको 1 लाख रुपए की जरूरत है पर मंथ, और आपके बैंक डिपॉजिट या कोई भी अदर इंस्ट्रूमेंट जहां पर भी आपने इन्वेस्ट किया है इज ओनली फेचिंग यू 60,000 रुपीज. वो 40,000 की भरपाई कहां से होगी? So this is the time when you will have to be bothered about how to generate cash flow more than how much to earn on your investments and what kind of returns are you going to generate on those investments. आपको जरूरत है तो जरूरत है, आपके पास दो राय नहीं है, because you will have to be dependent on that corpus only to generate income for yourself. Remember, your requirement is cash flows and not returns at this stage. उसके बारे में भी हम बात करेंगे. This is my own quotable quote. Remember, wealth creation is a byproduct. Wealth creation is a byproduct and directly proportional to your savings and investing habits. आप जितना सेव कर सकोगे, as I told you, you will have that initial stage of your career जहां आपके पास काफी पैसा होता है. When you have more disposable income, then there will be another stage in life when your income will grow and your wealth will also grow, and you will have once again you will have more disposable income. इस दौरान पे if you do not accelerate your saving and investing habits, then wealth creation cannot, ये किसी और के ऊपर डिपेंड नहीं करता है, ये अपने खुद के ऊपर डिपेंड करेगा. because instruments जो मार्केट में अवेलेबल है, they are common for all of us. Returns are common for all of us. How you invest and what strategy you will adopt is again will depend on how you manage your wealth creation going forward. So wealth creation is a byproduct of your own savings and investing habits. Please remember that invest wisely with an aim to protect your savings. आपने जो सेव किया है वो सेव कहां से किया है? Do not forget how difficult it was to earn that money. और ड्यूरिंग दिस कोविड पीरियड 2-3 साल काफी लोगों ने बहुत दिक्कतें देखी है. दे हैव सीन लॉट ऑफ अप्स एंड डाउन्स इन, किसी ने जॉब लॉस किया है, किसकी सैलरी कट हो गई है, बिजनेस लॉसेस हुए हैं, बहुत सारा हुआ है. सो यू मस्ट अप्रिशिएट, इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू अर्न दैट मनी. आपने जो अर्न किया है और यू हैव लेट गो ऑफ अ लॉट ऑफ योर नीड्स, वांट्स, एस्पिरेशंस, गोल्स, वो सब को छोड़ के बाजू में रख के आपने उस पैसे को सेव किया है और उस पैसे को आप इन्वेस्ट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. इन्वेस्ट वाइजली बिकॉज यू डू नॉट विश टू लूज दैट मनी. योर प्राइमरी इंपॉर्टेंस शुड बी डाउनसाइड प्रोटेक्शन. आपने जो सेव किया है, अर्न करने के बाद सेव किया है, सबसे पहला एक आपका क्राइटेरिया होना चाहिए कि उसको मैं प्रोटेक्ट करके रखूं. द returns of that on that particular saving and investing will be a byproduct of the strategy which you adopt. So वो बहुत जरूरी है आपको जानने के लिए कि इस सेविंग को, इस इन्वेस्टमेंट को वाइजली से इन्वेस्ट करें, इस सेविंग को. And we will discuss this also in the subsequent slides. आप लोगों ने सुना होगा FOMO. FOMO is fear of missing out, which leads to greed. Avoid FOMO because जब भी आप FOMO में घुस जाएंगे, मेरे फ्रेंड ने पैसे बनाए क्रिप्टो में, मेरे फ्रेंड ने पैसे बनाए इक्विटी में, मेरे फ्रेंड ने पैसे, मेरे रिलेटिव ने पैसे बनाए बाय इन्वेस्टिंग इन रियल एस्टेट और XYZ. Forget having that fear of missing out. You must follow certain strategy, and that strategy should ensure that there is some downside protection as part and parcel of that strategy. Control your emotions on both sides of the market, greed and fear. आपके जो emotions जो होते हैं, we become greedy when the markets are in a one-way bull run, when we become fearful when the markets are in a one-way bear run. But आपको उल्टा ही करना है. जब भी markets नीचे जाती है, वैल्यूएशंस चीप होती है, आपको ज्यादा इन्वेस्ट करना है. जब भी मार्केट ऊपर जाती है, एक्सपेंसिव होती है, तभी आपको प्रॉफिट बुकिंग करना है, थोड़ा सा स्लो हो जाना है. ये बहुत जरूरी है. एंड दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई फियर ऑफ मिसिंग आउट लीड्स टू वेल्थ डिस्ट्रक्शन एंड वेल्थ इरोजन एंड नॉट वेल्थ क्रिएशन. मैं बोलता हूं, मैं बार बार ये दोहराता हूं दैट इन्वेस्टर्स आर बिकमिंग अभिमन्युज who are stuck in a equity चक्रव्यूह. उनको पता नहीं है कि कैसे एग्जिट करना है या प्रॉफिट बुकिंग करना है. Let us not become Abhimanyus who are stuck in equity चक्रव्यूह, and that is the reason why we will have to follow certain asset allocation strategies. Harder you fall, longer it takes to recover. मैं आपको एक simple example देता हूं. If Nifty जो 10,000 से 5,000 पे आ जाती है, उसका मतलब है it's a 50% drop in the market in your portfolio also, but that 5,000 to grow back to 10,000, it has to grow by 100%. आप ये देख सकते हैं, जब तक 50% फॉल के बाद 100% मार्केट ऊपर नहीं जाएगी, तब तक आप ब्रेक इवन नहीं होंगे. आफ्टर यू ब्रेक इवन, देन ओनली यू विल गो इनटू द पॉजिटिव टेरिटरी. सो अगेन harping on that point of downside protection is very important. जितना आप अपना डाउनसाइड प्रोटेक्शन को, करेक्शंस को, ड्रॉडाउन्स को कंट्रोल करोगे, योर बाउंस बैक्स विल बी मच फास्टर. लेट्स गेट द बेसिक्स राइट. व्हाई डू कार्स हैव ब्रेक्स? आई एम श्योर एवरीबडी विल थिंक दैट कार को ब्रेक इसीलिए है सो दैट यू कैन स्टॉप द कार व्हेन नीडेड. बट द अदर इंटरप्रिटेशन इज that you can accelerate the car. आप स्पीड कर सकते हो because you are at the back of your mind. आपको पता है कि आपके पास एक ब्रेक है. आप समझिए कि मैं क्या बोलना चाहता हूं. लोग बोलते हैं कि कार्स में ब्रेक होती है क्योंकि आप जब भी चाहते हो उसको स्टॉप करके ब्रेक लगा के स्टॉप कर सकते हो. मैं बोलता हूं कि कार्स में ब्रेक इसीलिए है कि यू कैन स्पीड अप. जो आपकी गाड़ी में ब्रेक नहीं होती तो आप स्पीड अप करते. आंसर इज क्लियरली नो. कि आपको पता है कि ब्रेक ही नहीं है तो मैं स्पीड कैसे बढ़ाऊं आगे जाके. व्हाट डज दैट हैव टू डू विथ मार्केट्स? यू स्पीड अप ऑन फ्रीवेज व्हेन देयर आर लेस चांसेस ऑफ मिसहैप्स. जब ये फ्रीवे होता है, खुली जगह होती है, मार्केट्स आर एट अ चीप वैल्यूएशन जोन, मार्केट्स आर गोइंग अप, तभी आप एक्सेलरेट कर सकते हो. बट when markets come to a very expensive zone, बहुत crowded हो जाती है market, all the investors have participated in the markets, equity markets, debt market, crypto market, whichever market you want to call, you have to apply the brakes so that you avoid the mishaps. And the corrections which are happening in the market currently are those brakes which are guiding you and telling you that markets were overheated. आपको थोड़ा सा slow होना था. अभी इसके बाद जो मार्केट करेक्शन कर गई और उसके बाद आप वापस फ्री वे पे जा सकोगे, बट वो फ्री वे पे जाने के लिए आपके पास कैश होना जरूरी रहेगा. At this point in time, if you do not have cash in your portfolios, you will take irrational decision, और जो मार्केट्स करेक्ट करेगी तो आप अपने लॉसेस पे निकलोगे. As against that, you should have been ideally investing at such valuations. March 2020 जब ये हुआ था, it was the cheapest valuation possible. जब भी लोगों को इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए था, but they invested in Jan 2020 when markets were at its most expensive valuations that time. So please avoid that. And the break, what we are talking about here, is nothing but the corrections in the market which is happening currently. Mutual funds are capable of achieving a much smoother journey through either asset allocation or what we call dynamic asset allocation funds. What do? They aim for smoother journey through asset allocation or investing in DAF schemes. This will help you control your emotions of greed and fear, and I will explain to you how that will happen. And we'll do downside protection. Asset allocation karoge, or if you invest in dynamic asset allocation schemes, then you will have downside protection. Market जब भी correct करेगी, तभी automatically आपका जो portfolio होएगा, if you are following asset allocation or if you have invested in dynamic asset allocation schemes, there will be downside protection because we will be investing at right asset class at right valuation. Asset allocation, dynamic asset allocation funds जो होते हैं या debt में invest करते हैं या equity में invest करते हैं. Market महंगी हो जाती है, they reduce equity exposure and bring it to debt, और जब भी market सस्ती हो जाती है, वो जो भी डेट में था उसको इक्विटी में लेके जाते हैं at the right valuations. Not many people are aware of this, that 92% of returns of the investors, वो जो 92% investors को जो returns मिलते हैं is through asset allocation. It's a survey, it's an analysis which was done way back in 1990. Only 8% is from stock selection or market timing. Unfortunately, investors are spending more time on that 8% rather than on that concentrating on that 92% which is delivering returns to them. Asset allocation delivers 92% of returns in your portfolios. Only 8% is delivered from your market timing or stock selection. What does asset allocation strategy or dynamic asset allocation schemes do? When there is maximum risk in the market, they will reduce equity exposure, but unfortunately 80% of the investors invest at this level, and that is the reason उनकी जो investment experience जो है वो बहुत बुरा होता है. Investment returns जो हम दिखाते हैं एक्सेल शीट्स में दिखाते हैं 5 साल 10 साल 20 साल का, वो इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियोज में नहीं दिखता है because of their own emotions. They become greedy at this when there is maximum risk in the market. 80% investors are investing, उसका मतलब है they are becoming more greedy. As against that, asset allocation will do just the opposite. Only 1% of the investors invest when markets are at cheap valuation. When did this happen? 2008-9 जब markets ने 60% correct करी थी, March 2009 में it was the cheapest valuation. 2010 to 2012 markets ने correct करी थी, it was the cheapest valuation in 2012. 2020 March में जब markets ने correct करी थी by almost 40% in a month, it was the cheapest valuation. But only 1% of the investors are investing at this stage because they have already invested at high levels. So they end up doing buy high and sell low, and they panic at this time. As against that, asset allocation and dynamic asset allocation funds will buy low at cheaper valuation and sell high. Just the opposite of what investors are doing. So asset allocations, most investors buy when there is maximum risk in the market, end up doing buy low, buy high, sell low. Asset allocation and DAF will do just the opposite of buy low, sell high, downside protection, and being in the right asset class at right valuation. Stop chasing returns. एक मेरा दूसरा एक quotable quote है. The day when you start chasing returns will be the day when downfall in your wealth creation will start. Let me give you a classic example. In 2017-18, so एक साल 2018 जनवरी में आपने एक साल का पुराना रिटर्न देखा होता, पास जो पॉइंट टू पॉइंट रिटर्न्स हम बोलते हैं. As on 31st of December 2017, Nifty 50 had delivered 29% return. Nifty mid cap had delivered 47% return, and Nifty small cap had delivered 57% return. After looking at these returns, investors started investing in small cap and mid cap rather than investing in the large cap space, because they saw that past returns बहुत अच्छे थे, तो आगे जाके भी वो investor को returns देके जाएंगे. They forgot that these are expensive valuations of small cap, mid caps, etc. They were not bothered. Everybody was investing. We will also invest. Fear of missing out. बट आप देखोगे कि उसके बाद जिसने भी जनवरी 1 2018 में इन्वेस्ट किया इन स्मॉल कैप, लार्ज कैप एंड मिड कैप, एज यू कैन सी, निफ्टी मिड कैप डिलीवर्ड -26% एज ऑन 23rd of March. Nifty small cap delivered -36%, and Nifty 50, which had gone up reasonably 28-29%, but it fell also the least, because the expensive valuations of mid cap and small caps came to haunt the investors. So please understand, you cannot chase returns by looking at the past performance. You have to see the valuation on a particular day, whether it is cheap, reasonable or expensive valuation. Markets are giving us signals every day. Okay, I'm in the red zone, I'm in the yellow zone, I'm in the green zone, but हम उसको देखते नहीं है, हम नजरअंदाज कर देते हैं उसको. Downside protection is very important. Now let me explain to you. From 2018 to 23rd March, if you had invested 1 crore on 2018 Jan, Dynamic Asset Allocation Fund delivered only 2.76% negative. Your value of 100 lakhs was 94 lakh rupees. Nifty 50, your value had come down to 73 lakh rupees. Nifty mid cap, your value had come down to 52 lakh rupees. And Nifty small cap, your value had come down to 37 lakh rupees. More the corrections, more difficult it is to bounce back. So जो सबसे least fall किया था, they would have started bouncing back after 23rd March जो recovery हुई है. So that's the reason why this the balance advantage fund category or dynamic asset allocation fund category would have bounced back and gone into positive immediately thereafter. But small cap and mid caps would have taken a long time. So mid cap had to go up by almost 50% for it to break even. 1 crore को वापस 1 crore लाने के लिए it would have had to go back by 100% ऊपर जाती, तभी वो 1 crore पे वापस आते. 36 lakh rupees को तो almost it broke even only in June 2021 if I recall correctly. So from 23rd March 2020 to June 2021, it was still recovering the losses. It was only recouping the losses. So harder you fall, longer it takes to recover. So downside protection becomes very, very important in your portfolios. Financial planning gets derailed when markets turn volatile. आपको सबको पता है, फाइनेंशियल प्लानिंग में जब भी आपने मार्केट को बहुत वॉलेटाइल बनते हुए देखा है, मार्च 2020 हो या 2008-9 हो, many SIPs were stopped when ideally you should have increased your SIP at that time. Many investments were redeemed out of equity or wherever you were in March 2020, even at huge losses. As against that, that was an ideal time for you to have invested more. आपको financial freedom चाहिए, then this derailment of your investment strategies of withdrawing from SIPs or withdrawing money from lump sum which you had invested in equity at wrong valuations can derail your entire financial planning, and your financial freedom will be pushed further away from you. That was the best time in valuation when you should have invested and not disinvested. Dynamic asset allocation fund is helping you at better valuations and gives you a much smoother journey with downside protection. जो मैंने आपको दिखाया था last slide में, it had fallen the least 1 करोड़ की वैल्यू 94 लाख रुपीस थी, 1 करोड़ की वैल्यू स्मॉल कैप में 36 लाख रुपए थी ड्यूरिंग द सेम पीरियड, बिकॉज dynamic asset allocation funds were more in debt when the markets turned extremely expensive, and when the markets started falling they would have invested more into equity at the best valuation possible. Again, this is very important for you to understand कि जो investors के जो emotions जो है वो that is not letting them do proper asset allocation. Advisors have to protect the investors from their worst enemy. आपको मालूम है आपका worst enemy कौन है? आपका worst enemy है आपका खुद की emotions, खुद का emotions of greed and fear and your own biases. So हमको जो financial advisors जो होते हैं, जो आपके फाइनेंशियल एडवाइजर्स जैसे प्रूडेंट कॉर्पोरेट है, उनको आपके इमोशंस को मैनेज करना बहुत जरूरी है rather than managing the money. And I'll explain to you that money is not being managed by the advisors, money is being managed by the fund managers of the fund houses. Confirmation bias, आपको लगता है कि खाली इक्विटी लॉन्ग टर्म वेल्थ क्रिएट कर सकती है, या किसी को लगता है कि मैं अभी इक्विटी में जाऊंगा ही नहीं, मेरे को डेट में ही रहना है. So these are all the confirmation biases of the investors कि मेरे को डेट पसंद है, मेरे को इक्विटी पसंद है, मेरे को गोल्ड पसंद है, मेरे को रियल एस्टेट पसंद है. So they are not able to do proper asset allocation. Everything was going hunky dory in the last few months. Markets were scaling new highs. आप लोग भूल गए थे कि it was totally central bank liquidity driven rally. सबसे ज्यादा जो लिक्विडिटी आई है पोस्ट कोविड by printing more money by central banks across the globe, not in India but USA, Japan, Europe, जहां पर भी आप देखो उन्होंने प्रिंट किया है और वो लिक्विडिटी मार्केट में आई है. सो सब लोग भूल गए थे कि ये लिक्विडिटी कहीं ना कहीं कभी ना कभी स्टॉप होएगी, वो ड्राई अप भी हो जाएगी. सो ये जो ऑप्टिमिज्म बायस था, दैट वाज नॉट लेटिंग यू डू प्रॉपर एसेट एलोकेशन. लॉस अवर्जन बायस, आपने मार्च 2020 में लॉस देखा तो that was the right time. It's what we call I do not wish to have more losses in my portfolio, so I will exit out of it. So वो एक irrational decision बन जाता है जहां पर आपको लगता है कि अभी इसमें पैसे नहीं बनने वाले, मेरे को निकल जाना चाहिए and get into, but at the wrong valuation all of a sudden again. And self attribution bias, अब तक जो भी चल रहा था आपको लग रहा था कि this was my skill. It was not your luck, it was your skill you thought, based on which you were making money in the market. So that's self-attribution bias. So these are all the biases which are not letting the investors do proper asset allocation. Your financial advisor will help in controlling your emotions. So remember, your financial advisor is not managing your funds, as I told you earlier. Funds are being managed by the fund managers of mutual fund houses, and financial advisor is only managing your emotions and guiding you in the right direction. Please listen to your financial advisor. वो जब भी आपको बोलते हैं, please have caution. Markets are overheated. This is the time to get into asset allocation. थोड़ा profit booking करते हैं, equity से liquid में लेके जाते हैं, and so on and so forth. We are only managing your emotions. We are controlling your greed and fear. We are not managing your money. Please keep that in mind. So stop blaming your fund managers. Sorry, your advisors कि आपने मेरे को क्यों गाइड नहीं किया, आपने मेरे पैसे क्यों डुबा दिए, या whatever excuses you may be giving them, they are not managing the money. Money is being managed by the fund managers of the mutual fund houses. We are only guiding you in the right direction. It is your choice whether you wish to go in that direction or not. Avoid frequent portfolio reviews because that only creates panic and irrational decisions. हम जो बोलते हैं एक्शन बायस, आप जब भी जितनी बार आप फाइनेंशियल एडवाइजर को मिलते जाओगे, आप कुछ ना कुछ सोचोगे कि आज लगता है कि यहां से निकल के यहां चले जाते हैं, इस असेट क्लास से निकल के दूसरे असेट क्लास में चले जाते हैं, लार्ज कैप से निकल के मिड कैप में चले जाते हैं, या मिड कैप से निकल के स्मॉल कैप में चले जाते हैं. अननेसेसरी एक्शन बायस बना देते हैं. And that is the reason why we should avoid frequent portfolio reviews if you are following certain strategies of asset allocation. It can be SIP, it can be STP, it can be asset allocation, it can be investments in dynamic asset allocation funds, or stay invested for long term. Long term की definition unfortunately mutual fund industry में बोली गई है 3 to 5 years. मेरे हिसाब से वो गलत है. There is no definition of long term. If you have invested in the green zone, लॉन्ग टर्म कैन बी 2 साल में आपका पैसा डबल हो सकता है. बट इफ यू आर इन्वेस्टेड इन द रेड जोन इन जैन 2008 में आपने जो इन्वेस्ट किया होता 1 करोड़ की वैल्यू आज 1.9 करोड़ है, बट आपने मार्च 2009 में इन्वेस्ट किया होता तो 1 करोड़ की वैल्यू थी 2.3 करोड़ इन 2010. Within 1.5 years, your value was more than double in 2000. So long term cannot be defined in terms of number of years. Long term is defined based on when did you invest. Did you invest in the green zone, yellow zone, red zone, etc. Asset allocation strategy helps you in rebalancing at right valuations. And wealth building is equal to less activity plus patience. जितना आप less activity करोगे और patience रखोगे, let the strategy pan out over a longer period of time, you will definitely create long-term wealth and financial freedom sooner than later. Solutions to achieve asset allocation through a mutual fund scheme. Now let me introduce to you pedigree of Baroda Mutual Fund. I don't think Bank of Baroda or Baroda Mutual Fund needs any introduction, but let me explain to you the sponsor, the Bank of Baroda Baroda Mutual Fund is a 113-year-old state-owned bank. It has emerged as the second largest bank in India in terms of branch network and customers, and third largest bank in terms of lending capacity. It has over 131 million customers, 8,533 branches, 10,000 ATMs, and over 85,000 employees. So Baroda Mutual Fund has a great pedigree, a great sponsor, and their particular proprietary model, what we call Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund, jo hai unka, it follows a proprietary model. It is a dynamic asset allocation fund, which will be increasing equity allocation when the markets become cheap and decreasing equity allocation when the markets become expensive. Minimum allocation to equity will be 30% and maximum up to 100%. जब ये market बहुत महंगी होगी, they will be 30% in equity. जब market सबसे सस्ती होगी, they will be 100% in equity. 0 to 50% in arbitrage and 0 to 35% in debt. So this is the proprietary model which follows the price to earning, price to book, earnings yield gap and dividend yield as a matrix to do rebalancing between debt and equity. इसमें ज़्यादा जानने की जरूरत नहीं है, उतना ही है that they have done wonderfully well as far as these four metrics are concerned. The performance of that scheme is also amazing. Since their inception in 2018, they are the top performing dynamic asset allocation scheme in that category of dynamic asset allocation schemes. It's what we call counter cyclical approach. Counter cyclical का मतलब ये होता है जब ये मार्केट महंगी होती है उनकी इक्विटी एक्सपोजर कम होएगी, जब ये मार्केट सस्ती होती है उसकी इक्विटी एक्सपोजर ज्यादा होएगी. As on December 2021, they were 52%. Currently, the latest figures will come out after 31st Jan only, but that will also show us that how they increased or decreased equity exposure based on the market valuation. What will Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund do? Downside protection. Invest more when maximum opportunity and exits at maximum risk in the equity markets. Regular profit booking. जब भी मार्केट महंगी होती है तभी constantly कुछ ना कुछ profit booking होता है, because let's assume that today it is 100 lakh rupees and in the next month it becomes 110 lakh rupees. They will reduce equity exposure and bring it to debt. So कुछ ना कुछ profit booking होता रहेगा. And if the market's valuation comes down, they will invest at better valuation from switching money from debt to equity. So regular profit booking, buy low, sell is constantly happening, and I'll explain to you through another slide as to how beautifully this works, which will not work otherwise if you were not following asset allocation. It will give you smoother and less volatile investment journey, and more importantly, debt market में आपको अलग से invest करने की जरूरत नहीं होती है. If you are investing in a product like Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund, let me explain to you why I'm saying that also. आपके पास कुछ इमरजेंसी कैश किटी रखी है इन लिक्विड फंड, बैंक डिपॉजिट, सेविंग्स बैंक एक्सेट्रा, वो आप अपना अलग से रखिए, बट आपको अलग से डेट में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है, बिकॉज ऑन एन एवरेज 30% एक्सपोजर टू इक्विटी मिनिमम और मैक्सिमम 100% बहुत रेयरली होता है. एवरेज इक्विटी टू डेट होल्डिंग विल बी अबाउट 50-50. सो जब भी आपके पास 50% डेट ऑलरेडी है थ्रू अ डायनेमिक एसेट एलोकेशन फंड लाइक दिस, why do you wish to create another folio and invest in debt separately? जहां आपको समझ में नहीं आएगा कि क्रेडिट कॉल है कि नहीं है, इंटरेस्ट रेट्स ऊपर जाएगी तो आपको डेट में योर नेगेटिविटी विल स्टार्ट इन द डेट पोर्शन ऑल्सो, and on top of that, that debt portion 50% which is there on an average in the scheme will have equity taxation also. So आपको debt separately allocate besides your emergency cash etc करने की जरूरत नहीं है. If you had invested, this is a back-tested model of Baroda dynamic. If you had invested when the market Sensex BSE 100 was at 6100 from 2007 to 2010, markets delivered no return, as you can see, 0.21% return. But the scheme, because it was constantly booking profits when the markets were going up and buying at when the markets valuations were cheap, delivered 12% return during this period. When markets delivered no return, Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund back-tested model जो हमने यहाँ दिखाया है, it delivered 12% return. आप देखेंगे 2008 to 2010, again markets delivered nothing, no return whatsoever. This scheme delivered 12.47%. So आप देख सकते हैं when the markets had delivered no returns during that period also, a dynamic asset allocation fund like Baroda Dynamic is capable of delivering 7% to 12% returns, as I have shown you here. The other argument against a dynamic equity fund is that during bullish markets, it does not participate fully. I disagree that totally. Let me show with you the actual example of the back-tested model again. When markets were at its cheapest in 2009, markets had corrected by 60%. And from there to December 2021, the biggest bullish period which you can think of, from markets, S&P BSE 100 moved from 2400 to almost 17,452. If S&P delivered 16.6%, this scheme delivered 16.07%, but with on an average 54% equity exposure. S&P 100 is 100% equity, but on an average, because of debt and equity combination, in spite of that, it participated 90 to 95% of the returns on the upside during bullish period. बट यहाँ पर जो हमने एक एग्जाम्पल लिया है, दिस इज ऑन द इंडेक्स, जो फंड मैनेजर का जो अल्फा होता है इन टर्म्स ऑफ स्टॉक सिलेक्शन, स्टॉक पिकिंग एक्सेट्रा, इफ दैट वाज एडेड टू दिस during this period, naturally Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund would have done better than even the Sensex also. During the bearish period, what happened? 2007 to 2009, when markets delivered negative 45%, it protected downside and Dynamic Equity Fund delivered 23% negative. Naturally, there will be some equity components, so जब भी equity रहेगी, at some points in time it will be negative, but it will protect you on the downside. 45% versus 23%, 43 lakh rupees value versus 68 lakh rupee value. 2015-16, when markets delivered negative 21%, Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund delivered negative 4.7%. 78 lakh value versus 95 lakhs value, 100 lakhs की बात कर रहा हूँ, original investment. And 2018 to 2020, negative 10% versus negative 2.76, 79 lakhs versus 94 lakh rupees. So it's a all seasons product. Bullish market, it participates in the upside. Bearish markets, it protects you on the downside. And in the stagnant markets also, it delivers returns. Now let's talk about how do you position this scheme for different age groups also. You want to achieve financial freedom in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's assume that. I'm not getting into the years ke aap 50 saal ke ho, 55 saal ke ho. I'm saying that you want to achieve financial freedom in the next 5 to 10 years. Ideal product, because 10 saal mein bhi equity has delivered negative returns. 5 saal mein bhi equity has delivered negative returns. Ideal product for you, if you wish to achieve financial freedom in the next 5 to 10 years, is a dynamic asset allocation fund like Baroda Dynamic. As you can see, from 2015 to 2020, आपने जो SIP की होती 10,000 rupees SIP, which is 6 lakh rupees invested over this period, it has delivered negative returns in Nifty 50, 500, mid cap and small cap. But Baroda Dynamic, because of its inherent buy low, sell high and downside protection, delivered positive returns. A similar example from 2008 to 2013, when markets Nifty 50 delivered no return, 10 lakh rupees invested in lump sum, was 9.73, approximately negative 0.5%. During the same period, the 10 lakhs actually grew to 14.68 lakhs in the dynamic equity fund backtested model, delivering 8% return. Rest of it in the multi-cap, mid-cap, small cap, all delivered negative returns. So if you wish to achieve financial freedom in the next 5 to 10 years, keep that in mind either through lump sum or in SIP. Ideal product is a product like Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund. You want to generate tax efficient cash flows. The current solution is interest on bank deposits or dividend from stocks or mutual funds. Alternate is SWP from Baroda Dynamic Equity Fund. And let me explain to you how this can work. Let's assume you wish to achieve cash flows in 1 year post achieving financial freedom. आपने जो 2008 में इन्वेस्ट किया होता बरोडा डायनेमिक इक्विटी फंड में और 2009 के बाद एक साल उसको पकड़ के बाद आपने 50,000 per month मीन 6% per annum उसमें से विड्रॉल किया. From 2009 to 2021 you have withdrawn 74 lakh rupees at 6% per annum, assuming an investment of 1 crore in that scheme. Current value after this withdrawal of 74 lakhs also is 2.98 crores. On this 74 lakh rupees, you've only ended up paying 3.78 lakh rupees as tax, long-term and short-term capital gains tax. As against that, under any traditional instrument, the same 74 lakh rupees, current value would have been 1 crore only. You would have ended up paying 22.2 lakh rupees as tax. It is a really tax efficient way of investing. On top of that, because underlying is growing at 10 to 12%, you are only withdrawing to start with 6% per annum. Your current value is also higher than the original investment of 1 crore. Now let's talk about, so this can be applied to maybe a senior citizen who's retired and he wants to start getting his cash flow from 1 year later onwards. As against that, somebody who wishes to have financial freedom after 5 years. So उसको बोलते हैं हम डिफर्ड एन्युटी बोलते हैं कि आप 5 साल उसको इन्वेस्ट करके रखिए. 2008 to 2013 आप 5 साल उसको इन्वेस्ट करके रखिए. उसके बाद यू डू SWP from 2013 to 2021. आपने again 6% per annum, 50,000 per month, 6 lakh rupees per annum is what you have withdrawn, 50 lakh rupees throughout this period. The current value of the scheme is still 3.79 crores after these withdrawals, on which you have only paid 3,12,000 on 50 lakh withdrawal. The same 50 lakh withdrawal through traditional instruments, you would have ended up paying 15 lakh rupees as tax. 10 years deferment for a youngster also who wishes to create financial independence after 10 years. 2008 to 2018 आपने कुछ नहीं किया, उसको ग्रो करने दिया उस स्कीम को. उसके बाद you started withdrawing 6 lakh rupees per annum, which is 20 lakh rupees. You withdrawn from 2018 to 2021. The current value of the scheme is 4.41 crores. You only ended up paying 1.44 lakh rupees as tax. So treat this as a very, very powerful instrument for any age group to do a deferred annuity and achieve financial independence. Finally, let me conclude by saying you are achieving magic in your portfolios. Moderate volatility. When there is equity, there will be volatility, but it will be moderate volatility. Algorithm based model, जो अपने आप ही based on, as I told you, price to earning, price to book, dividend yield, earnings yield gap वगैरह, algorithm based model के हिसाब से it will do rebalancing between debt and equity. Growth in your portfolios, I've shown you, even in spite of SWP, you can still grow your portfolios. Investment diversifications, because you're diversifying into debt and equity. First of all, asset allocation हो रहा है. And finally, consistent returns. It will not be volatile कि एक साल में आपको 50% positive मिलेगा, next year में 30% negative मिलेगा. वो journey नहीं रहेगी. It won't be a volatile journey. It will be a much smoother journey and consistent returns also. Financial freedom can help you pursue your passions. That's very, very important. So financial freedom, achieving it sooner than later should be your aim. I will conclude here and then we will take up the Q&A. I am available on, I am Mr. Bond, those who wish to follow me on Twitter. And finally, let me conclude by saying mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully. Thank you.